Alright guys, how are we doing today? This is going to be a little controversial, so please bear with me. Although, in my opinion, it shouldn't be controversial. People are ridiculous. But this is from Ruptly, otherwise often abbreviated as RT, and it says, "The real inconvenient truth. Polar bears thriving in spite of climate change," but saying this gets scientists fired. Oh my god. Polar bears have become the poster child for climate change. Their population is supposedly devastated by shrinking ice cover, but when one zoologist disproved the myth, she came under the inquisition of climate church. This is going to have some loaded language, so I'll translate for you. They're basically suggesting that the people who support the idea of climate change have a almost religious fervor. Yeah, middle age religion, a dark age religion, where it was all militant and whatnot. Zoologist and polar bear expert Susan Crackford was shunned by the Academy for her insistence that despite the polar bear status as a climate change icon, the warming planet had actually caused the species to thrive. She did not deny climate change, merely the idea that it was harming the bears. So she wasn't actually denying it, and neither am I. But when the more fervent supporters of climate change have their ideas questioned, they go all Spanish Inquisition on their ass. Oh my god. After losing her contract as an adjunct professor at Canada's University of Victoria, where she worked for 15 years, she has been vindicated by a report from Northern Canada confirming her theory that polar bears are climate change's beneficiaries rather than its victims. Footage of an emaciated polar bear captioned, "This is what climate change looks like," yanked at the world's heartstrings when it was posted on National Geographic in 2017. 8 months later, the publication changed the caption to "This is what starvation looks like," admitting there was no way to tell why the bear was starving, but it wasn't the first sick bear to be pressed into service for the environmental cause, and it won't be the last. Climate Change's PR team may have made an unfortunate choice in elevating the polar bear to icon status. Don't get me wrong, climate change is most likely very, very real. If you look at the fossil record, it's happened before, many, many times. However, admittedly, those more charismatic and emotional people within the climate change movement have skewed some of the statistics in favor of a single narrative, i.e. their narrative of anthropogenic global warming, and try to make it into a bigger disaster than it really is. Hey, anyone remember Al Gore and his Inconvenient Truth movie? Remember his prediction that the world was going to end in 2012 because of climate change? I look out the window now, I'm like, nah, it's still here. Still plenty cold. Actually, I like the cold better than I do the heat. I'm considering moving it someday to a more colder area. Honestly, last summer, it wasn't that hot, but the amount of heat and humidity in the air was actually causing me to have headaches. I may someday have to move for the sake of my health. That has never happened before. But, yeah. Some people within the climate change movement are skewing the statistics in one direction to support their narrative and literally no other. The Inuit group who actually live with the bears in northern Canada seem to agree with Crockford's claim that bear populations are increasing, as documented in a court affidavit by the Director of Wildlife Management for the Nunavik Marine Region Wildlife Board. Faced with cuts to their bear hunting quota by an environment ministry concerned with population numbers, Nunavut residents have seen an increase in the polar bear population, and a particularly notable increase since the 1980s, the director attested. Nor are the plentiful bears suffering or sickly. Nunavik Inuit reported that it was rare to see a skinny bear, and most bears are observed to be healthy. The affidavit continued, locals are, however, reportedly concerned about outside perception of declining polar bear numbers, fueled by groups like the World Wildlife Federation, WWF, which explicitly described the bears as the poster child for the impacts of climate change on species. Crockford has been saying for years that bear populations are either growing or stable, even though they may go down in some habitats. They increase in others. She does say starvation is the most common cause of death for adult bears. But there are many factors that could lead them to the state captured by National Geographic. From too many bears straining food supplies and leaving slower hunters outcompeted a broken jaw, other injuries, and disease. But as ice cover decreases, she claims polar bears thrive. The ringed seals that are one of their primary food sources multiply in the warmer water, and polar bear populations have been steady or on the rise since 2005, all predictions of doom aside. Polar bear populations hit record highs in 2018. Crocker revealed in last year's The Polar Bear Report, whose publication by the climate-skeptical Global Warming Policy Foundation was sparsely noted outside fellow traveler sites like Climate Depot. Despite sea ice depletion to levels not expected until 2050, which is supposed to decimate 2/3 of the bear population, the animals are thriving. In fact, they're thriving too much, according to the humans who have to live with them. The Nunavut governments sounded the alarm last year. Inuit believe that there are now so many bears that public safety has become a major concern. The polar bear may have exceeded the coexistence threshold. 2 locals were killed in bear attacks in the region, nor is Canada the only habitat affected in 2017. They lay siege to the Siberian town of Rirk-a-Pli, invading human homes and terrifying the locals. Even the WWF has softened its predictions of a polar bear apocalypse. I said solar. Polar bear apocalypse. And only one of the 19 bear populations are in decline as of 2017, while 2 are increasing and 7 are stable. Yet the International Union of Conservative of Nature insists that numbers will plummet to 30% by 2050, linking population declining with dwindling sea ice. So in short, polar bears aren't going anywhere. In fact, they're going somewhere. Somewhere that is literally causing a huge problem, both for Inuit and probably for seals as well. Walruses hauled out on land are spooked easily and will plummet from cliffs in their rush to return to the safety of the water. These stampedes can be triggered by polar bears who do so deliberately in order to feast on the dead walruses left trampled or smashed at the cliff bottom or by overhead planes. So that's a problem too. Wow. One of the most notorious examples of the phony wildlife tragedy gave rise to the myth of suicidal cliff-jumping lemmings. A 1958 Disney nature documentary captured the little creatures marching off a precipice, teaching viewers a valuable lesson about blindly following a leader, but the scene was staged by the filmmakers for the sake of added drama. Climate change proponents may not be staging mass animal suicide to convince the public, but their effort to torpedo the career of a scientist for reasons unrelated to the integrity of her research is equally unprofessional. The climate change debate must be held in good faith by scientific professionals on all sides, with participants free to voice their research-based dissent with prevailing orthodoxy. Or it's not science, but doctrine. Yes! Quit it with the Spanish Inquisition-style bullshit, alright? Oh no! He doesn't support climate change! We must silence him! What even is that shit? Let me tell you something. You know what that looks like to the outsider who's not familiar with the climate change debate? It makes it look like you've got something to hide. Why else would you be trying to silence them? If you want to defeat lies and mistruths, you do not suppress them. You drag them out into the light, kicking and screaming, if you have to. And drag them out of the light of day and expose them for what they are. Not suppressing them. That just makes it worse. And no, people who would like to deny climate change, this is not evidence that climate change isn't a thing. Both sides, both climate extremists and climate change deniers, need to look at the fossil record as well as the meteorological data. It is undeniable. Climate change is occurring, but I believe it to be a natural process that has happened before and will happen again. I mean, what, you think the Earth was always like this? Hell no. And it's not going to be like this the way it is right now forever either. And so what if human activity might be accelerating it? It was going to happen eventually anyway, right? I mean, by how much effect does human activity have on it, really? That's the data I want to see. Stop showing me meteorological data on the way weather's changing. What is carbon dioxide doing? Show me that. Instead of filling me up with nonsensical rhetoric. If you're silencing the other side and not actually having debates, it is no longer science, it is doctrine. And that's when you get into sort of like the militant, almost religiosity of the matter. And again, to an outsider, it makes you look crazy and makes it look like you've got something to hide. And another issue, for that matter, is how the media tends to sensationalize this. Well, they sensationalize everything, but the way they sensationalize and make a big emotional deal out of it, with people like Greta Thunberg making this big emotional speech and whatnot, being all charismatic and shit. Sure, they show some scientific data, and the data does indeed appear sound, but you know what's going to be a result of all this sensationalizing. Zealotry. They're actually going to be helping this militant climate activism. They're actually helping it. They're making it more likely. When you got groups like Extinctionist Rebellion, which, by the way, sharing the results of my research on them, no, they are not a cult. They're a collective. A collective is a category that I'm putting together that is sort of a space in between an ordinary group and a cult. Because a cult engages in full-blown mind control as appearing on the Byte model. When I compared the Byte model to every information I could dig up on Extinction Rebellion, I am happy to say that they are not a cult. They do not engage in a sufficient amount of mind control to be considered a cult. But they do engage in some mind control practices. The most worrying of which is they even admit it. Their co-founder admitted this, that they are deliberately blurring the line between the individual and the group when you join. They talk about how everything that makes you who you are is assimilated into the group. You are assimilated into the group. Your life becomes about the group. What does that sound like? That sounds like cult indoctrination. This sort of sensationalistic approach to climate activism is what's causing these groups to appear. I mean, if you've got a better idea about how that's happening, let me know, but this seems like a very likely scenario. Let's stick to the facts and let science be science, not doctrine. Stop suppressing the opposition. Talk to them. Treat them like human beings and have a discussion. Stop acting like you've got something to hide. If your position really is the truth, then it should have absolutely nothing to fear from being questioned. Absolutely nothing. Anyway, peace.